Modern games are designed around the player winning, or at least presented as some chosen one, a dragonborn, what have you. This sets you up for a downhill battle into a power fantasy. Gothic is designed around the player earning that power fantasy instead. Its difficulty isn't necessarily a slider, it's sort of baked into the design philosophy itself, and it then produces a unique experience. And this is something that modern games have forgotten. That is to say, truly, that modern games make it so that the world feels like it revolves around you, the main character. Gothic 1 is a bit more load-bearing. And what I mean by that here is that the world is going to exist with or without you. And let's be honest here, so many games boast that, you know, they say like, well, the NPCs are going to go do whatever they want. And that's true, but the consequence is never really there in a lot of those games. Think of a Skyrim, think of an Elder Scrolls period. The majority of the time, you're never going to have the door closed in your face. And that's not the case here with Gothic 1. What is oftentimes kind of explained away as Eurojank, quote unquote, is really kind of the scheduling system, I guess you want to say, of Gothic 1. The NPCs have a schedule. If you miss them on their specific points, if they're in specific locations, in specific chapters, then you lose access to that NPC's quest chain. If you join one camp before another camp, maybe too soon, you close the door to giving yourself access to specific skills. Now keep in mind though, what I'm telling you is the older system of the game, the Gothic 1 non-remake, the OG version from 2001. Now in the remake, a lot of that consequence has not been removed, it's just been shifted. It used to be something in the sense that you could not get heavy armor with any other camp other than the old camp. From what I understand now, that is not the case. But the reputation of your place in this game is one of the biggest things. You know, hey, you don't have the proper reputation with one camp, well then you don't get the respect of that specific trainer and they won't train you in whatever that skill is. So your character doesn't get a chance to actually grow. The world is pretty indifferent to your place in it. And I think that's the big distinctive point. You play like on Elder Scrolls, everything is either benign or it is hostile, right? Most things here are indifferent or they're going to kill you. It's pretty much how it is until you earn their respect. And that earning the respect opens those doors. It frees that consequence, because consequence is ultimately the point of this game. Everything puts you one step closer to a set lock-in narrative. And what I mean by that is, hey, I've chosen to go with, let's just say, the old camp, and I've chosen to go with more of a warrior style of build, and I've chosen to go help this character and not that character. Well, that creates a narrative path for me. That shuts off the new camp, it shuts off the swamp camp, and it most certainly shuts off access to water mages or whatever it is, which, to be fair, is also a bit different of a thing. And the remake also expands on all this consequence. Because prior to this, like I said before, if you made one step in one direction, it would shut that door. Well, now the consequence of, say, the new camp or the swamp camp choice has been expanded upon itself. It used to be, hey, you'd go with the old camp because it had the best narrative. This time around, the new camp and the swamp camp have improvements to their narratives. There's more quests available to those locations. So these consequences feel more rewarding. There's more faction, more quest line, more reputation to earn. And all that comes back around to a world, like I've said before, feels far more alive without your interaction than it has in most modern games that we've seen in the last 15, 20 years. But what does that really buy you? You know, what do you get in return? What do you get out of that? And I think so many videos on Gothic 1, my own included, have been very vocal about warning people, hey, this is going to be hard. Hey, this is going to be a different experience. Or it's an experience you just don't remember, right? And what you get out of that is a different kind of power fantasy. I want you to think of like a Crimson Desert. I want you to think of a Skyrim. I want you to think of how easy it is to leverage a very strong power fantasy in a lot of modern role-playing games, action games, what have you, by simply following a build online. This game's not really built around that. Yeah, you can follow that build, but the narrative pathway has to lead you to that build. You can't just simply blitz the first 15 levels by doing X, Y, and Z, and now you get the super cool Sword of Doom, and now you're just, you know, slashing things apart. It's not like that. The game rewards you by having your character earn its actual place to have the power fantasy that it creates. Now, there are narrative things that happen, and I don't want to talk about those or anything of the sort, because your character is this nameless hero that's pushed into this imprisonment that becomes something. And that something is based off of your reputation that you build and how you're going to make that character grow. It's a feeling that I think that modern games don't choose anymore, because it's just so much easier to say that you're the last of a dying race of elves or vampires or whatever, and then the narrative itself creates the power fantasy. But those things, I think they create too cookie cutter of an approach. And Gothic wants you to get your hands dirty. It wants you to play a game where you feel like you're just never going to get better at it. And as you really whittle away at it, and it's really truly the first like 5 to 10 hours, depending on how slow you go in that initial portion, before your character starts to get a little bit of traction. And that return starts to come in. What do you get out of this is that you start to get this character that feels like they evolve very visibly in front of you. I've brought this up in past videos, how combat in the game has a visceral change as you get better. And very few games do that. It's always like, yeah, maybe your combos are faster, or maybe you now have combos, or maybe now you can cut off something's head. Like you think of Skyrim when you go through the one-handed line, something like that. Whereas Gothic, you feel the character move around the actual play field way differently. The character starts to feel less heavy. They feel more of a master of their movements. And I'm just talking about combat, not to say how much more exciting magic becomes, especially the remakes version of the magic, which just has it dialed up. So your character becomes something that grows as you grow within the narrative, the decisions, and reputation that you build in this game. You can be proud of someone who represents this faction because you've built it up over this time, versus, hey, I'm the same character regardless of the faction I joined because I chose this disembodied skill menu and just chose all the skills that I wanted, and that became my character. No, your decisions are dictated by the decisions you make, and that then returns to you a super strong character built in the image that you have in mind. And that matters right now because we're in a real interesting point in video games. We've been very iterative, right? We've made all these really cool original things, and now we're coming back around on those original concepts, and we're iterating on them and making them different and trying to sharpen things. But we've also lost a lot of the lessons of the OG gaming period, right? Like for some people, the golden age of gaming is the early millennium. If you talk to an older person, that golden age of gaming is in like the mid 90s or the late 80s. If you want to think of the golden age of CRPGs, which is like a Baldur's Gate or a Divinity Original Sin, those are CRPGs. A lot of people will tell you that's the late 80s with like Ultima. So we're always going to be in that point of like, well, the games are always better back then. But what I think Gothic 1 brings back is something that we sorely need in video games right now. A removal from a system that feels disembodied to what your character's actually doing. A system that rewards you for playing the game as it presents itself to you rather than following a build guide online or following someone's exact way to play the game. I've always been a proponent that leveling systems within a game are not particularly good, because they give a pretty static scale. Whereas I've always really enjoyed skill systems within a game. And Gothic combines those by saying, hey, your level grants you skill points that you then take to invest in your skills to become better at the game. So levels are something that I think that ultimately degrades the actual customization of your character. And Gothic 1 brings that back in a very big way by opening the door to a kind of experience that we've always had in video games, but one I think we've always wanted to be reminded existed, so we can hopefully push back into the conversation of what makes a strong RPG a strong RPG. That's really the crux of it, right? That's the closing point here, is that a role-playing game, you think of a Dungeons and Dragons, which is the genesis of RPG, is about consequence, is about choice, is about action. You can't go back and change accidentally stabbing that guard because he looked at you funny and you made a weird thing at your dungeon master and he just didn't know what to do. So he made you roll strength and you critted and you took the guy's eye out. You know, there's a cause and effect. And that makes for a very fun step forward. The rules aren't here to punish you in Gothic. They're here to create your journey, your path, and ultimately how you're going to play that path again. Well, you know what? Last time I was here at nighttime and I talked to this character and I did their menial task, and it opened the door to necromancy as a hypothetical. Well, what if I don't do that? What if I go over to this character and talk to him and I become a mercenary and then I learn a crossbow and now I'm hunting? There are so many decisions to make in this game. And each decision rewards you by closing off the other decisions, by forcing you down a path. And that is very uncommon for a lot of video games, which really reward that lack of permanence. So I think you're really going to enjoy a world that has a consequence like Gothic 1 does. And I think as a result too, you're going to come out of it really enjoying the narrative step that you choose every time you jump back into this game. Anyone who is a veteran is going to tell you that I've played this game this many times through all the camps. The old adage used to be, hey, which camp is the best? And people would always respond with all of them, because the true meat of Gothic 1 is playing it through so many times, enjoying different approaches to it, and getting the most out of a game that brings rules that have been forgotten back into the limelight. So thank you so much for watching here today, guys. If you found something valuable out of this video, if you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those things helps me out in a huge way. Don't forget to check out the link to my Discord below. It's the best way to get up to date when I'm streaming, posting content, and you can also take part in any of the content polls to determine the future of the channel. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.